YA nerds, Rue here with another review. This week we're talking about the Serafina series. Wow, that's a lovely glare. So I actually got very lucky and I got the advanced reader copy of the third book, Serafina and the Splintered Heart. It's by Robert Beatty, B-E-A-T-T-Y, Beatty. All in all three books are 967 pages. They've all been released in July from the last 2 years. So the first book, which was Serafina and the Black Cloak, got released July 2015. Serafina and the Twisted Staff was July 2016. And then this one is coming out July 4th, 2017. You guys will probably see this review right after it gets released. Again, like I said, I've had it for the last month because I got it as an advanced reader copy from one of my 2 jobs. So let's get talking about this book. For the plot, I'm just going to read it off of Goodreads. Serafina has never had a reason to disobey her pa and venture beyond the grounds of the Biltmore estate. There's plenty to explore in her grand home, although she must take care to never be seen. None of the rich folk upstairs know that Serafina exists. She and her pa, the estate's maintenance man, have secretly lived in the basement for as long as Serafina can remember. But when children at the estate start disappearing, only Serafina knows who the culprit is, a terrifying man in a black cloak who stalks Biltmore's corridors at night. Following her own harrowing escape, Serafina risks everything by joining forces with Braden Vanderbilt, the young nephew of the Biltmore's owners. Braden and Serafina must uncover the man in the black cloak's true identity before all the children vanish one by one. Serafina's hunt leads her into the very forest that she's been taught to fear. There she discovers a forgotten legacy of magic, one that is bound to her own identity. In order to save the children of Biltmore, Serafina must seek the answers that will unlock the puzzle of her own past. So the other 2 books, that was the first book's synopsis, or summary. The other 2 books follow after that. So in the Twisted Staff, similar thing happens. Some evil shows up. She has to defeat it. The evil's in the form of a twisted staff as opposed to a black cloak. And in the last one, which was the craziest one, in my opinion, she has to face off against her own splintered heart, essentially. So that's pretty much what the whole series is about. Like I said, it's a trilogy. The last one is out, or yeah, the last one's out. And now we'll talk about the review. So let me start off by saying that I loved the first book. Serafina and the Black Cloak, amazing. Couldn't put it down. It was the quickest one to get through for me. It's only 292 pages. Not a terrible read for kids. It was so interesting. Such a different kind of character. Fell in love with Serafina right away. I love that the author, Robert, allowed her to have an accent. That sounds weird, saying that out loud, but I feel like when you're writing about other people, it's hard to keep their accent intact. Her father, and therefore her, they both speak with like a southern drawl, and you can read it in the actual story. So I truly love that. That being said, I feel like this series suffers from the trilogy curse. By that I mean that the first book's amazing, second book was awful, third book was okay. If you just want to read the first book, by all means just read the first book. It rounds off very nicely at the end, it ends very well. I feel like Robert Beatty, whatever his name is, should have looked up how to pronounce his name before I started talking about him. I feel like he wrote the first book as a standalone, kind of saw how well it did. It was on the bestsellers for a while, and then was like, I'm gonna write 2 more books. Or maybe he planned to write 3 books all along, but he wasn't sure how the first book was gonna go, so he ended it nice, rounded it nice, and then was like, 2 more books, why not? A lot of authors do that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not faulting him at all. I would do that. I would write 1 book, see how great it did, and then write 2 more. That's the way that authors do. So it does suffer that thing I wrote here, that the second book makes you want to rip your eyes out, and the third book trudges along trying to be the first book all over again. Yeah. I had a hard time staying focused through the second book, as Robert likes to describe everything in intimate details, like down to the smallest molecule. You know, the book is geared towards 5th and 6th graders who have shorter attention span than I do, so I don't know how they were going to do on that one. And there's only so many ways you can describe a forest and a mansion in the woods. That being said, Serafina herself is an amazing character, as I said earlier. She carries the story throughout, and you actually worry about her on several occasions. Specifically in the third book, no spoiler, it opens up and she's buried alive. 5th and 6th graders. She's buried alive. Did I mention that it's a children's book? It's a children's book, and she's buried alive in the first chapter of the third book. Throughout the series, she does fight a lot, which is great. I love having her as like this hero of Biltmore Estate. You know, she is just this phenomenal character, really. I cannot talk more highly about how great she's written. I also found it really fascinating that the location for the series is a real place, which didn't dawn on me, I guess. Like, I kind of thought it was a real place, and then I was like, oh, you know, maybe it was a real place and it's no longer around, and now he's just writing about it. No, it's like the Biltmore Estates in North Carolina. And this really only hit home with me because I got another ARC, which is an adult book, actually, about the Biltmore Estates, about the same characters who are in this series, minus Serafina because she's fake. But I thought that was the coolest thing I think I've ever seen in my life. Was I finished reading a book about a place, and I got another book about the same place, but this book is talking about it from an actual nonfiction perspective. Fascinating. You know, again, the world that Robert builds around this place and these people and these events is phenomenal. The magic is really interesting. It definitely grabs your attention and holds it. I just wish he wasn't so wordy all the time. That being said, too, he does use a lot of really big words, so if you're going to let any of your younger kids read it, make sure they have a dictionary handy. Because I think I don't even remember, he used like a really big word that I didn't even know, and I've been reading since I was 4, and I read all the time, and I was like, I don't know this word. I don't know this word, what do I do? Like, I had to look it up. It was so weird. It's never happened to me before. So, there you go. As for tropes, I'm actually doing a different thing with tropes now. I was using TV tropes earlier to talk about tropes from books, and honestly, it just didn't fit with what I was trying to do. So this is going to be the first time I do this different trope thing. Just check down in the description to get my definitions for these tropes, because these are all things that I kind of gathered from my own knowledge of YA books, but also, you know, scouring the internet, seeing what other people said about tropes that are common in this kind of fiction. So the first one is The Chosen One. We also have Broken Family Units, Youths in Danger, Clueless Adults, Undiscovered Powers, Trilogy, SAT Vocabulary, Only One Friend in the World, and Unusual Names. For the rating, I'm gonna give this book an 8 out of 10, actually. Maybe I will read the first one again. I don't know about the other two. Again, I mean, I got an ARC copy of the third book, so it's unedited. It might be better when it comes out. Who knows? But the artwork's really cool, isn't it? I would rate the artwork an 11 out of 10. They all match. All the covers. They all, like, I think that's really what drew my attention about this series, is the covers. Covers are beautiful. They're so wonderfully made. My favorite part is the ending, because it's over. I know I just gave this book an 8 out of 10, but the ending is the best part, because it's over. Here we go. Not spoilery. She turned and looked at Braden. She studied his face, his hair, his eyes, the way he gazed off into the distant forest. Her heart began to beat strong and steady in her chest. Her hand began to tremble. Then she slowly reached over and put her hand in his. She felt the warmth of it, the living pulse of it, the soft skin and the bones beneath. This was her ally, her friend, the boy she fought her battles with. Braden turned and looked at her, somewhat surprised. Nervous, she felt like she needed to give him a little bit of an explanation of why she had touched him in this way. Thinking back on everything they'd been through, she said, "I just wanted to make sure that I was truly here." Braden smiled, understanding. "You are," he said. "We both are." Not that spoilery. A little spoilery. Not that spoilery. Spoiler alert, in the first book, she makes friends with a boy named Braden. That's the only spoiler alert you need. For the age range, I will say 12, 13, 14 plus. As an adult, though, this was a very rough book series to get through. Again, when books are written for kids, sometimes you can really tell. This book series is written for 5th and 6th graders. I'm gonna say 12-year-olds probably the target, really the targets of this series. And definitely young girls should read this book. For sure. I think young boys will also enjoy it. Braden is a really interesting character. Very nice character. But overall, this is a really good book to really teach your daughters to be strong and amazing and wonderful. And if your daughters happen to be magical creatures living in the Biltmore estate, definitely read this book. So again, 12, 13, 14 plus. That's what I'm going to say for this series. Actually, 14-year-olds will probably benefit from it as well. You know, just all of them, 12, 13, 14. So that's all for Serafina and the blank blank. Black Cloak, Twisted Staff, Splintered Heart. Thanks for tuning in. If you like what you see, make sure you subscribe. I'm going to update every other Thursday. So if you're watching this, I think this is going to come out July 6th, so we're not going to have one the week after that, but the week after that one. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you pick it up. I know I sound like I hated the series. I didn't. I gave it an 8 out of 10. It's really good. I'm just kind of picky sometimes, and I feel like sometimes I burn myself out when I read a trilogy like that straight in a row. So yeah, take care, YA nerds.